One crisis survival skill for our toolbox is using pros and cons lists. We use pros and cons when we need to choose between courses of action, when we've got a decision to make. So we're weighing up our options on an event, on a situation. When we're faced with a crisis, this is about weighing up what to do next and working out whether we're going to do this and it potentially makes things worse, or whether we're going to do this and it might make it better. And we use this skill all the time, sometimes many times a day, from deciding what we're going to have for breakfast, what we're going to wear, to what we're going to watch on TV, what time we're going to go to bed. We're always weighing up pros and cons of every decision. For example, it's Monday morning and your alarm goes off and the decision is, do I stay in bed or do I get up? So the pros of staying in bed, the pros of acting on that action urge to just want to roll over and pretend your alarm never went off. The pros of that is that I'm tired, I could get some more sleep, my bed's really warm and cosy, I could feel more rested with another half an hour. The cons of that are, I need the loo, I'm going to be late for work if I don't get up. If I'm late for work, I'm going to get in trouble. I've already got a warning from work because I'm late. I could potentially lose my job, and then I could struggle to pay the bills. And in that split moment, you weigh up those pros and cons, and you might decide, actually, the cons are far bigger and they weigh far more than the pros. So I'm going to get out of bed and I'm going to go to work. Firstly, have a think about what it is that you want to change. What behaviour do I want to give up, or what is dangerous or harmful to me that I want to stop doing that? So think about that first and even make a list of what that looks like. So, for example, it might be road rage. So I would write swearing at other drivers, waving my arms in the air, flashing lights, driving too close to the car in front, following people. All of those things are things I might want to change. I might not want to do them anymore because they're getting in the way of my life. Then we'd make a list of pros and cons of acting on that crisis urge. So the pros would be that it gets my anger out of the system. You know, I let people know how I feel. I feel like I'm communicating that, you know, they can't mess about with me and that I'm not going to be walked all over. Those might be the pros of responding in that crisis urge in that way. The cons of acting, of reacting to that might be, I put myself and others at risk because I'm driving dangerously. I could potentially crash in front of the car in front. I could hurt someone really badly. I could even kill somebody by driving so erratically. I might get myself arrested. And also I might end up following the wrong person and I might come to serious harm myself. So those are the pros and cons of responding to that crisis urge and that behaviour that I want to change. And you might have more than one thing that you want to change. So you would make a different list for each one. And after you've done the pros and cons of acting on the crisis urge and that responding to the behaviour in the way that you normally would, you make a list of the pros and cons of not acting on your crisis urge. So if you were to tolerate that stress and to not give in to that urge, what would be the pros and cons of that? So the cons might be it's really difficult. It might mean that I have to carry that feeling of anger for a little bit longer. I'd have to figure out what else I could do with that feeling of anger. The pros might be I'll avoid hurting people. I'll avoid crashing into the car in front or into another car. I'll avoid feelings of guilt afterwards and that feeling that I've made a right fool of myself there. I've made a bit of a show. It wasn't even that important. That person might have had something else on. I feel terrible. You know, or if you followed them, you might find that you followed the wrong person and it's a a little old lady, and you've really scared her, so you're left with that guilt afterwards. And so the pros would be then I won't have any of that guilt, and I can feel good about myself. I can feel like, yeah, I handled that well. I can hold my head up high thinking, yeah, I kept myself tidy today. I did well. So when do we do our lists? It's best to do your lists before a crisis hits, so that you will know what kind of the things that you want to change, the things that you want to be different. Because as a crisis, they've got a nasty habit of creeping up on you when you least expect them. But if you have these lists to hand and you can review them, they could stop you from responding in a way that you don't want to respond. We're trying to change behaviour, and yes, it's very, very difficult. But if you've already unpicked the pros and cons of responding in a certain way, and you can look at that list and think, do you know what? Oh, the cons are quite large. I'm not really going to do that. Or the pros are very large. I'm not going to do, whatever it is, whatever which way it goes. It gives you more options. It gives you more choices to be able to change your behaviour, because that's what it's all about. So this is helping you to stop and think before responding in an automatic way. If a crisis hits, it's not too late to use your pros and cons. So by reading through your pros and cons list in a moment, you're actually reviewing something that you wrote when you were in a wise mind position. Because when that crisis hits, you've gone into emotional mind, and your action urge and that initial gut reaction, that response, is very much from an emotional mind position. Whereas if you've written a list of pros and cons of things that could and could not happen from a wise mind position, you're giving yourself more opportunity and more chance to do something different, which is what you want. You want to change behaviours, you want to do something differently. So you're giving yourself more chance, and by just reading through your lists, whether it's on your phone, whether it's an actual list that you've got in your wallet, your purse, whatever, just buying yourself some time and reading through that enables you to stop, to pause. So when a crisis hits, check your pros and cons, get your list out, give it a read, remind yourself of the good things about not acting on the urge, remind yourself of the problems of giving into crisis behaviours. Have you given into crisis behaviours before? How did that work out? What was the consequences? Why is this something you want to change? Obviously, it's not something that you want to keep doing to have written a list about it. So remind yourself of all of those things.